Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboia Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends, to another Trust the Profits Graded Stakes preview. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. Well, before we get into this Monmouth Saturday Stakes preview, which is referred to as Haskell Preview Day, not to actually confuse you with the real Haskell, which is still in a couple of months, or next month, I guess I should say, in July, make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube to get all of our great content on Trust the Profits, from live streams on Monday and Thursday evenings where we're doing live betting and handicapping at Assiniboia Downs and Woodbine, to handicapping shows like this one, where we're looking at graded stakes previews, to horse racing news shows like the Win Play Show. We have something for every type of horse racing fan, including, coming up next week, a lot of Royal Ascot previews. So make sure to check out everything that we have here on Trust the Profits. Like this video and comment below with what your thoughts are on the Saturday Monmouth Stakes that are taking place, and maybe your best bet of the day, or how you're going to be playing this all stakes pick 4 sequence that they have going on from races 10 through 13. Well, listen, friends, this was initially supposed to be an episode of Capping the Card. I was going to do race 1 through 14, give you my top pick, top value play of every single race. But then I looked at the forecast, and the forecast for this weekend in Oceanport, New Jersey is less than stellar. 70% chance of thunderstorms on Friday, 70% chance of rain on Saturday. There's 6 stakes. There are 6 turf races on the card. Have a feeling that some of these are going to get moved to dirt. Have a feeling there's going to be a lot of scratches. Have a feeling conditions are going to be quite something else. And so I thought, something, rather than doing Capping the Card, which might end up being quite an academic process in which half of my selections get scratched or the surface change, etc., I thought, let's just do a stakes preview. But here's the thing, because I do like giving people value plays, top picks, if you follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, I'll still be giving out my top pick and top value play for every single race on Saturday at Monmouth. I'll just be doing that on Saturday morning on Twitter. So I'll just be posting my top pick and value play there. So you can still get that information. But like I said, rather than talking through all of those races that ultimately might end up getting scratched or moved to another surface, or, if it's a sealed track, etc., a lot of variables that are still unknown figured, I just focus on the 4 stakes races, talk to you a little bit about those today. All right, let's dive into the first of the 4 stakes races on the card. And this one is, of course, the one that's kicking things off, and that's the Pegasus. And this is for 3-year-olds going 1 1/16 on the dirt. And obviously, there's a really big name in this field, and that's the number 8 horse, Kings Barnes, who's 8-5 in the morning line for Todd Pletcher with Louis Saez aboard. Listen, this is a horse that we all know very, very well. He was on the Derby Trail, won the Louisiana Derby, was one of the favorites in the Kentucky Derby. Went off at 12-1 that day, but was among the top third of the choices on the board, essentially. So, had gotten some respect there. Just got eaten up by that pace. That was a very aggressive pace that they were setting out in the front end with verifying. Kings Barnes just could not keep up with that. And so now you see we're going back to Louis Saez in terms of the jockey. Jose Ortiz is off the mount. Flavian Pratt not riding. That's who rode him in the Louisiana Derby. Saez rode this horse to his maiden victory, so does have some experience there. But I think it's fair to question Kings Barnes in this sequence. 8-5, that's a short price for a horse that's coming back after a really grueling trip. Now, on one hand, you could say, listen, we just saw Verifying, who set that pace, who was just ahead in front of Kings Barnes, come back and run a really nice second place in the Grade 3 Matt Win, just barely losing to Disarm. And there's nobody in this race who's as good as Disarm. So you could say, well, listen, Verifying came back strong. Why can't Kings Barnes? I think it's just a horse-by-horse situation, to be perfectly honest. If you look at last year's Kentucky Derby and the very fast pace up in front, it was amazing to see how much that took out of so many of the horses up there. Summers Tomorrow never raced again. Crown Pride took, I believe, 4 months off. You had Zozos take 7 months off. You had Messier take 5 months off. All of these horses had very prolonged layoffs. The only one who was close to the early speed who came back was Taba, who came back 11 weeks later to finish second at the Haskell. I don't know if Kingsbarn's as good as Taba. So, it's just a matter of how fresh does that horse come back. I kind of want to play against Kingsbarn's in this spot, but the question is, who do you play against? Well, we know who's going to be out on the lead, and that's Subrogate, the son of Arrogate. And I know with Arcangelo, there's going to be a lot of people who gravitate to this horse. If you look underneath, the pedigree is all sprinter. Goose Lemon Drop, the dam, was a very nice turf sprinter, elusive quality, obviously a sprinter. Yes, you have Lemon Drop Kid going back a couple of generations, but and while you have Arrogate up top, it does seem like this horse is more of a sprint horse. A mile is probably the max distance. I don't know at this caliber if this horse is able to do it. Just broke its maiden last time out. This is the horse that's going to be out on the lead at 5-1 on the morning line. Kingsbarn's presumably sitting off of that. Now you look at what else is here. You do look at a horse like Classic Catch. I'll give you a statistic. Todd Pletcher and Paco Lopez, when they team up at Monmouth in dirt races, they are winning at a 47% clip over the last 5 years. Hello, that's not bad. 74% in the money. And that's just overall. Any dirt races over the last 5 years at Monmouth, Pletcher and Lopez, 47% winning, 74% in the money. Here's the kicker, 100% in the money in stakes races. Now, Classic Catch is 3-1, so using this horse in your verticals is probably not going to get you a ton of money, but this is a pretty tried and true connection with these two. And this is a horse that does have some nice races to run back to, has that versatility, will be coming running late. If Subrogate and Kingsbarn start to fade a little bit down the stretch, this is certainly a horse that could benefit. I actually think the horse that's the most intriguing in this field is How Great Is Nate? This is a horse I really like quite a bit. Now you'll look at that Gotham on the muddy sealed track, and you'll see that was where they lost the rider at the start. Here's the thing, though. If you remember that race, How Great Is Nate ran a heck of a race. It just didn't have a rider on him, but ran beautifully and didn't seem to be bothered at all by sloppy conditions. Comes back 2 races later, wins the stakes race at Monmouth, against a nice field. Awfully Cool came back to win next time out. 90% Matty is a nice horse. So, beat some decent horses here. How Great Is Nate should sit the right type of trip, should sit that sort of pocket trip, and then be able to move late. If you think Kingsbarn's might just fade, maybe that race took the starch out of him. If you think Subrogate might not be able to handle the mile at this caliber, How Great Is Nate, I think, makes a little bit of sense here. So that's one that I might be playing. The other one that's interesting because of conditions is the 4 Salute the Stars for Brad Cox. This is a turf horse who then went and broke its maiden, or I shouldn't say broke its maiden, but won a really nice allowance race at Churchill off turf. Now, it was still a fast track, but generally speaking, turf horses don't mind moisture on the dirt. So if it is a sloppy sealed track, a muddy sealed track, maybe Salute the Stars is a horse that likes that sort of condition, should sit a very similar trip to How Great Is Nate. And you might get a nice little price there because this is a horse, again, the form is a little muddied up because of the 2 first turf races, only one time on the dirt. That was supposed to be one that was on the turf, just new to Brad Cox barn, used to be in John Ortiz's barn. So a lot of things that are interesting here. Second back from a really long layoff. So I kind of am interested in the 4 and 7 here. I know a lot of people, if they're playing horizontally, are going to just go with single the 8 and move on. I'm not going to be upset with you if you do that, but I think there's a way to beat Kingsbarn's in this spot. Obviously using a few different horses to do it, but I think there's a logical argument to be made that you can get around him in this particular race. Well, let's move to the Eatontown Stakes, which is a grade 3 going a mile and 16th on the turf for 3-year-old and up. And these are for fillies and mares. And again, this is on the turf, scheduled on the turf. There's a lot of rain in the forecast. I would imagine that they will try to do everything possible to keep the turf fine for these final 2 stakes races. I would not be shocked at all if all of the other turf races come off the turf and they only run the 2 stakes races on the turf. That's something that you see parks do regularly. It's something you see Naira do regularly when there's this sort of bad weather. You see it down in Gulfstream Park. Save it for the stakes races, get everything else off. So that's kind of the MO I think that they're probably going to use depending on how the forecast plays out. But listen, this is an interesting field in this grade 3, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons. You certainly have a horse like Consumer Spending that's going to get a lot of attention. no doubt about it. Second back from a really lengthy layoff and ran a decent race last time out to a horse market segmentation. We saw win on the Belmont Stakes weekend. So, and came back to win very nicely. So that gives you a lot of confidence. Chad Brown's second back from the layoff is always dynamite, winning at a 32% clip with the 246 ROI. And he's teaming up with Sammy Camacho, who's kind of his go-to jockey in the Monmouth circuit. That said, the speed figures don't pop off the page at you. I mean, it's not as if consumer spending is that much better than everybody else in the field. Horse like surprisingly seems to be very close. Obviously they finished necks apart last time out, but running very similar speed figures. Shug McGahee having Paco Lopez aboard. Paco at Monmouth is just a different type of jockey, winning at a 31% clip here. And so he's doing quite well. So those are two obviously very interesting horses that people are going to look at. There are two other horses that are intriguing to me here. One is because of conditions and one is because of the potential pace setup. Malavath is an interesting horse to me, the number 6 horse for Christophe Clement with Joel Rosario aboard. This is a horse that's kind of technically second back from the layoff, ran April 16th, hasn't run since, but that was, previously ran in the BC Mile. So this is a Breeders' Cup caliber horse that was running in Group 1 races overseas and running pretty well in Group 1 races. I mean, finishing second to Kinross, who's a very, very good horse. And finishing right up there and, winning a Group 3, finishing behind horses like Saffron Beach and EGOT. I mean, these are really, really good horses over there. Comes over here, finishes 5th by a length and 3/4, comes back and runs and was the huge overwhelming favorite and just did not have a great, trip and tired a little bit going a mile. I think the horse needed one off the bench. Here's the other thing to keep in mind. The horse, yes, is stretching out. So it's fair to go, is the mile the max for this horse? And might a mile on a 16th be a little bit too far? Maybe. But if you go back and look, this horse runs well on soft ground. You go back and look, this horse broke its maiden on soft ground. This horse won a Group 2 on soft ground. This horse has run very well on good to soft conditions, finished second in a Group 1 to Kinross over soft ground. This horse likes soft turf. So if it is as wet as it seems like it's going to be this weekend, I feel like Malavath might be a pretty nice bet there. The other one that I'm interested in is Scottish Star, 6-1 for Todd Pletcher with Louis Saez aboard. Listen, I always think that he's going to get the slip and wire the field. Second back from a brief layoff, 3 consecutive second place finishes. He's absolutely a horse I would use in your vertical exotics. I think he's even got a chance here because here's the thing. You have a horse, Katie's a Lady, the number 7, who I think is going to be the speed. That's the horse that's actually going to go out there and set the pace. And I think Scottish Star is going to be able to sit second and maybe make a little bit of a run. If you notice, that's how this horse actually, ran well at Saratoga, finished sitting second to a horse that was kind of running out on the front end and then passing that horse late. That was his first time on turf here in the United States. So I think that's a horse that might actually do better sitting second, interestingly enough. Has a lot of speed, has run against some nice competition. So I think this is one that, I know you could say, well, he's lost to Spirit and Glory. He's lost to Surprisingly. He's lost to some other horses in this field. He's lost to Chantasara as well. He's running against some nice horses, both on the dirt and the turf. I just think this is an interesting one that you're going to get a price on at 6-1. Let's move to the Salvatore Mile. And obviously we're going a mile. If you couldn't tell by the name of the race. But this is a grade 3 for 3-year-old and up. And on a certain level, the Salvatore Mile, you would look at this, and if you look at something like Optics Plot, which I know a lot of people do, it's kind of it just basically takes pace, latent early pace figures and kind of plots things out, and it's a bunch of circles and squares. Nimitz Class, the number 8, would appear to be the absolute overwhelming favorite in this field just based upon that. However, when you dive into this race a little bit more, I'm not entirely sure that's going to actually hold up and be true. There's a lot of speed in this race. And, Nimitz Class might very well be the best, He's still probably my top pick, but I don't think it's as overwhelming as some people would say. Um, the key for him is he's going to need to sit behind the lead in the pace, which he can do. He absolutely can do it. He's done it in stakes races before where he sits off and then makes a run. The last few times out, obviously, the last 4 times out, he's been sitting first or second at first call and second call. So he's been a very forwardly placed, a very speed favoring horse. And certainly his training usually indicates that. Now, he's a horse that doesn't work out very often. They just run him a lot to keep him in shape. But it is interesting to see he can win from off the pace. He's going to need to do that here because Trademark's going to be on the lead. Octane's going to be on the lead. You look at a horse, even like Empty Tomb is going to be forwardly placed. Riding with Biden is going to be forwardly placed. Petulante is going to be forwardly placed. There's going to be a lot of horses jockeying for the lead early. The key is for Nimitz class to sit off of some of that, let people wear themselves out, and then kick for home. I think he's still the most likely winner in this field, so I like him at 7-2 as my top pick. I do think the race sets up very, very nicely for Artorias, who's your morning line favorite for Chad Brown with Florent Giroux aboard. The problem with Artorias, and it's not so much a problem with the horse, but the running style. I'm always very skeptical about closers coming back off long layoffs. That's a tough thing to cut. A lot of times, closers, you need to have that kick. That's not always there first time back. It is for some horses, but it's a very hit or miss thing. And if you're giving me 3-1, I don't like that at all. Certainly this horse has run and won the Curlin last year, and then went to the Travers and was really, pretty thoroughly outclassed. Ran against some nice horses, obviously in the Perryville as well with Gunite and Hoist the Gold, and even B-Doc, who's a nice horse, but really hasn't been the same since that Curlin. So expecting him to suddenly return to form. I know Chad Brown's great off the layoff. I know the works look really solid, but again, I'm just not sure that late kick is necessarily going to be there. Speaking of a horse with a late kick, I would absolutely include Bourbonic, everybody's favorite Wood Memorial winner from 2 years ago, actually from 2021. He's only won one race since then, and actually it was pretty reasonable pace. It wasn't like he needed this huge pace to collapse. He beat Sheriff Bianco, who's a nice horse a lot of people talk about, has run in a couple of stakes races since then. But here's the thing. It's just there's a lot of pace. He's going to be the beneficiary of that. He's going to come running late. He's going to come running late. And you figure maybe this is a horse that this kind of works out for him in that regard. So I kind of like Bourbonic to come running late and to get a piece at the very least. And then the other one that I'll just give a mention to is Petulante from the inside rail. I have a feeling the rail's going to do this horse in. He's a young ascending horse, second back from a layoff. The speed figures keep getting better. I don't think he's run his best race yet, but I'm not sure Saturday is going to be that best race. I think the rail is going to really force him to go. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of other speed in this race. When you combine all of that together, possible that he gets worn out at this distance. Not that he's run a mile before, possibly gets worn out running a mile against this caliber of horse. So that's one. I really like that horse. I really wanted to use that horse, but I'm just not sure how the pace is going to end up working out. Might use him underneath in some capacity. Maybe he holds on for a piece of the board, but I'm looking at Nimitz class as my top pick in this one. Well, let's wrap up the fourth of the 4 stakes races on Saturday with the Monmouth Stakes. And this is going a mile and an eighth on the turf. And again, we're looking at horses that have some experience over wet turf, over good ground, soft ground, yielding ground. What does that tell us about how this race might play out? Here's the thing. This is one race where I'm out on Triphoven. Triphoven is a horse that I just can never get a really great grasp on. He's very erratic in terms of when he runs his best types of races. He's extremely erratic off the bench too. And that's something that I think is noteworthy because for a horse that's 9-5, and if you get DRF and you read the closer look little, snippets that they have under each horse, you would think that Triphoven is Flightline because the rest of the field, according to the people who write the report, the rest of the field doesn't have a chance. I don't see it that way. Triphoven, this is Triphoven's record, first start or off the bench. 10th by 11.5 lengths. Third by a length. Third by a length and 3/4. pulled up 8th, won a race by a length and a quarter, and that was a grade 2. 13th by 7 3/4, 5th by 10 lengths. That's this horse's history off the bench. I'm not taking 9 to 5 with that history. This is a horse that runs anywhere from a 108 Beyer speed figure to an 81. There's a lot of variance there, folks. This horse has not run since August of last year. I know Chad Brown's great off the bench. I know Florent Giroux's a great jockey. This horse is the only speed in this race. So maybe he gets out, he wires this field, no problems, no questions asked. He can do the distance. He's always been able to go long. That's not an issue. And doing a mile and 8 is maybe one of his better distances, although he's only 1 for 3 winning and hasn't hit the board in other races. So something to keep in mind. But it's too erratic. You're expecting him to run back to that Manhattan, which was very impressive last year in June. Here's the thing. That was the second start back off the bench. So I'd love to see Treboeven get one under his belt a little bit before I, especially take 9 to 5. So where am I going in this one? I'll probably end up going to the number 3, Speaking Scout, for Grand Motion. I feel like this is a horse that just keeps getting better, and I feel like needed one more race. Finished 4th at that dinner party. That has come back very strong with Emmanuel, who finished 3rd that day, coming back to win a grade 3 in the Poker Stakes on Belmont Day undercard. So that already came back pretty strong. So you like to see that. And again, that was the second start back. You saw progression from speed figures. He was very competitive, 4th by 3/4 of lengths. He came running late. Okay. Now the concern here is maybe there's not enough pace for him to run into, but it's also a smaller field. He'll probably be closer up than he would be otherwise. So I think those are beneficial things. I think this is a horse that's absolutely got a shot here to upset the favorite. Now, listen, if you wanted to go with Never Explained, the number 2, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm never going to argue with the Shug and Louis Saez horse. Shug McGahee, one of my favorite trainers, second back from the layoff. This is a horse that actually won the dinner party last time out off the bench. And that was a very brief layoff, we should mention. It wasn't very long. But this is a horse that was racking up a lot of wins down in Florida over the winter. Has some nice form to run back to. It'll be interesting to see if that continues. But the fact that this horse was able to come up to Pimlico last time out and run so well, I think is really promising. So I do like this horse quite a bit. It's had some nice fresh works actually since that dinner party. Ran a bullet 37-2 at Belmont on June 3rd, and then ran a 48-2 up at Belmont on June 11th. So some nice works to show this horse is in really good form. So if you wanted to go with the 2, I'm not going to argue. That's my second choice. So, the 2 and the 3 probably splitting hairs a little bit for me. Then the horse that I'll take a shot with, probably more underneath, is Commandeer at 5 to 1 in the morning line. This, I just can't help myself. This is a horse that fits my type of profile. The horse has come back from a really long layoff, goes on a new surface, and throws up a huge speed figure on that surface. And now they're stepping up in class, second back from the layoff, second time on the surface. That's a move that I love to use because you always end up getting a price with those types of horses. You get Paco Lopez aboard, who's the top jockey at Monmouth. And it's a 6-horse field. Yes, he's going to come running late as well, but he's got nice early tactical speed. He can sit closer if he needs to, based upon what he's done in those dirt and synthetic races. So he can do that. It'll be interesting to see, but it feels like this horse is finally healthy. He's had a lot of stops and starts in his career for a 5-year-old, only 14th career race. So I'm going to use Commandeer underneath as a play. Really like that one to close things out. All right. Well, that's going to do it for Monmouth Haskell Preview Day, not the Haskell Day, Haskell Preview Day Stakes Preview. There's a lot of previewing going on here, but I hope that was helpful. And like I said, if you follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, I'll be giving out my top pick and top value play on Saturday morning once I see the conditions, once I see all the scratches. It's just there's a lot of variables, and I'd hate to do a whole show, have people watch, and have that and factor that into their handicapping and then have everything change. I just didn't think that was fair to you all. And quite frankly, it was also be a little frustrating for me to spend all the time doing it and then have it all switch at the last second as well. So there are definitely some maidens that I'm very excited about on the undercard that I can't wait to share with you about. So like I said, make sure to follow me on Twitter to get all that good stuff on Saturday morning. Make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits on our YouTube channel, get all of our great content like this video, and let me know who your picks are in all of those Haskell Preview Day Stakes races. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.